Religious leaders are suing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and Mayor Bill de Blasio over reopening plans, citing a blatant double standard for religious gatherings as mass protests go unchecked.
Well, our suit says that the policy is not neutral and generally applicable, and that it does pick winners and losers. So you have a situation now where you're talking about outdoor gatherings of 10 or more, or more than 10 are forbidden under the policy. You can only have a gathering of 10 according to the policy, but meanwhile, tens of thousands of people are marching in demonstrations about the death of George Floyd, which is their right. It's a noble First Amendment cause. And we're saying that people involved in religious gatherings should have the same right outdoors.
Let's cross to London now, where some of these same issues have been playing out. I'm joined as ever by the editor of Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. Thanks for joining us, Brendan. You've picked up on this. You've had protesters out in the streets in London. Therefore, lockdown must be over.
Yeah, it looks like lockdown is over. We have a staggering situation in this country right now. For the past week, all that the media has talked about is Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson's chief advisor. They've shamed him every single day. It was the only news story in town because he allegedly broke the lockdown by taking his family to Durham in the north of England. And now the same media is cheering on these massive protests, these Black Lives Matter protests, at which hundreds or thousands of people have rubbed shoulders and breathed on each other and broken the lockdown rules enormously. And the double standard is just, it's almost incomprehensible. It's this kind of pathological hypocrisy that we have where people have gone without for a long time, and these protesters seem to play by different rules entirely.
Now, thousands are expected to take part in Black Lives Matter protests held this weekend, with LNP Senator for Queensland Matt Canavan saying there's a double standard and a lack of consistency within restrictions as leaders express public health concerns over mass gatherings. I spoke to the LNP Senator for Queensland Matt Canavan just a short time ago.
I don't know what state premiers are doing here. They're certainly being inconsistent. If you can't go to the footy, if you can't go to concerts, if you can't even go to church in big numbers at least, why is it okay to get out in the streets and protest? There's an absolute double standard here. Sure, I agree with the New South Wales Premier that there's a right to protest in this country, but there's a right to express your religion freely too, and that right has been circumscribed because of the public health implications of COVID. So I don't see why this other right should similarly not be circumscribed if that's what is needed to fight this virus. We just ask people to be consistent.
Defying a ban on large gatherings due to COVID-19, thousands of protesters gathered in Paris to express their outrage over the death of a black man killed in police custody.
Cunin was one of the leading participants in the first student seizure of an American university, which occurred at Columbia in April of 1968. On page 130, Cunin wrote, "In the evening I went up to the U to check out a strategy meeting. At the convention, men from Business International roundtables tried to buy up a few radicals. They offered to finance our demonstrations in Chicago. We were also offered ESO, or Rockefeller money. They want us to make a lot of radical commotion so they can look more in the center as they move to the left." Jerry Kirk, while a student at the University of Chicago, was active in the SDS, the Du Bois Club, the Black Panthers, and the Communist Party. In 1969, Mr. Kirk broke from the party, and the following year testified before the House and Senate Internal Security Committees. Here is what Mr. Kirk has told us. "Young people have no conception of the conspiracy strategy of pressure from above and pressure from below. They have no idea that they're playing into the hands of the establishment they claim to hate. The radicals think they're fighting the forces of the super-rich, like Rockefeller and Ford, and don't realize that it is precisely such forces which are behind their own revolution, financing it and using it for their own purposes." he repeated the line from the song he liked so well. Something is happening here, but you don't know quite what it is, do you, Mr. Jones?
Keep the population at one another's throats, angry, suspicious, tribal, and maybe they'll never figure out how much we're stealing. These riots really shouldn't surprise you. It's hard to know exactly who is responsible for these sad changes to America, but it's very easy to see who's benefiting from them. They're the same people lecturing you about white privilege and systemic racism. This isn't accidental. Citibank is happy to put Black Lives Matter logos on its Instagram page. These people are scam artists. They're playing you. Keep that in mind the next time they tell you you must hate your neighbor, which is exactly what they're telling you.